I'm very pleased to do this interview. It's something I've been waiting for. With the movie out, Sound of Freedom, it's very important that as many of you as possible see it. Tim Ballard is the man that made this movie possible with his whole team. He's a former U.S. government agent with DHS. He quit his job to devote his life to rescuing children from global sex traffickers. The movie is absolutely heart-wrenching. Absolutely heart-wrenching what's taking place. And the fact that we're really only talking about, in the case of the movie, 50, 100 kids or so forth. This is happening by the thousands. So I'm going to shut up. Tim Ballard, how are you, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Mark.
Tim, tell America a little bit about yourself and what you are now committed to, really for the rest of your life, and why you're committed to it.
So, as you said, I spent 12 years as a special agent, undercover operator with U.S. government, working primarily cases of child crimes and sex abuse and child trafficking. And then in 2013, I was working a couple of cases, and they called me off the case. One in particular was in Colombia, and that's depicted in the film Sound of Freedom. And we quit. We quit and decided to stay to finish the case. And it was successful, as you see in the film. And then from there, we were able to continue to grow into multiple organizations. And today, I work with dozens of organizations, consulting, fundraising, and doing rescue operations all throughout the world, supporting law enforcement and aftercare services around the world.
Well, let's get into some substance to this. How many children are we aware of, and many of them are not even children, they're babies, are kidnapped one way or another and sold into sex slavery? Do we know about how many a day? Can we even imagine?
The numbers we have from U.S. State Department of Labor put the total number of slaves at 27 million, and about 6 million of those are children, either in slave labor, organ harvesting, and 2 to 3 million are estimated to be children in the commercial sex trade. In the United States, we being that we're the number one consumer of child sex material, what we used to call child pornography, makes us a target country, a country of interest. We're also in the top 3 for destination countries. So, when we have 85,000 unaccompanied minors, thousands of them under 5 years old, lost into the belly of the United States, that's a very concerning situation, obviously.
Yeah, it is very concerning. And honestly, and I'm not trying to drag you into my world, I don't hear this administration talking about it. I don't hear DHS talking about it. You worked for which department?
Homeland Security, the investigative unit, Homeland Security Investigations.
And you had to leave because they were trying to pull you back at this point, right?
Right. The jurisdictional limitations, just bureaucracy, and yeah, they pulled me back.
Does it help when we talk about child sex slavery when the border is not secure, or does that increase the problem?
Oh, I mean, a secure border is the only compassionate policy. I would say what Donald Trump did and others, and what's so funny is Clinton built more of the wall than Trump did. So it's never been political until Trump touched it. Then it became political to everybody, and they're trying to say is a bad thing. But when you build walls and when you enforce border policy, you give a child their last hope, because it forces the trafficker to take that child into a port of entry where trained women and men in uniform can identify and rescue, as you saw happen in the film, which is a true story. And so really it's 2 + 2 = 4. But this administration wants to play with that math and act like there's something wrong with border enforcement, something not compassionate about it, when in fact it's the only compassionate thing. These children want to be rescued, and they know their last hope is if a wall will direct their captors to take them to a place where they can be rescued. It's that simple. So really it's devastating what this administration has done in terms of politicizing and not enforcing our southern border.
The open border allows these sex traffickers to work between the two countries and between multiple countries. And you say, we're the number one, this country, consumer of child, what do we call it? Child sex or whatever we call
child
it.
Sex material, child rape videos, child sex material. Yeah, we consume more than anyone else in that area. So we have the demand. We have the pedophiles congregated here in numbers like you don't see anywhere else.
I just can't believe that we don't have a concentrated effort. You know, it's sort of divided into departments, but it's not talked about in the halls of Congress much. Speaker McCarthy spoke about it at some length today during his press event because he was at this event. It was his event where the movie was shown. He wants to do more about it, but I don't know. If I were President of the United States or Attorney General of the United States or Director of Homeland Security and I saw this, I'd have a meeting the next day with my people and say, okay, what are we going to do about this? We got to do a lot more than we're doing. It's on the increase, is it not?
It's on the increase like we've never seen. And I watched what came across as almost an interrogation in the Senate Judiciary Committee between Secretary Mayorkas and Ted Cruz. And Senator Cruz brought out these bracelets, and he said, "Do you recognize these bracelets? These child trafficking networks in Mexico are making upwards of $14 million a day, according to the New York Post. And I believe those numbers. And they put little wristbands around these kids to keep their trafficking of them organized. And Ted Cruz showed Mayorkas the wristbands, and he says, "Do you recognize these?" And he says, "I've never seen those before." And it blew my. I talked to Ted Cruz later, and he said that blew his mind. He thought he was at least going to admit that he knew that these kids were being branded this way, and actually it was an organized trafficking scheme. And he said, no, I don't know. And he didn't seem to care. I mean, the exchange is quite astonishing. They want people in this country. They want to open the borders, and I guess they don't care that children are clearly getting hurt in the process.
How young are some of these kids?
Oh, if you look at the CBP data, thousands of them are under 5 years old. So you have 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. It sounds bizarre, but it's the truth. Showing up unaccompanied, and people wonder, well, how do you think that 3-year-old got there? You think he walked there? She walked there? No. Mm-hmm. The traffickers take them from Central America, put them in a place where where CBP officers have to bring them in. They immediately go to HHS. Now, these kids will have, I've been there, I've seen this. These kids have like a little piece of paper, either bobby pinned to their shirt or in their pocket, and it has a name and a phone number of the sponsor. HHS, by policy, has to call the number, and the sponsor says, yes, hello, I'm George Smith. Oh, yes, little Jose Gonzalez. Yes, I'm taking that child. Zero vetting, zero background checks. They used to have a rapid DNA technology that Biden just canceled about 3 months ago. And so these children are released to whatever sponsor picks them up. The sponsor doesn't even have to show they're a U.S. citizen. It's harder to adopt a cat from a shelter than it is to take a child out from HHS custody. And now our taxpayer dollars will pay for the final leg of what will likely be a trafficking experience by putting that kid on a train, plane, or automobile, and your taxpayer dollars will pay for that kid to be delivered to the unvetted sponsor.
Tim Ballard, who is really the real-life figure in Sound of Freedom, which is a fantastic movie. It is intriguing, it's compelling, it's as good as any movie you've ever seen. Production values are through the roof. And you had trouble getting a major studio to do the movie and market the movie, didn't you, Tim?
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, Fox started with it, and then Disney acquired it. And once they had it were very clear that they weren't going to do anything with it, which probably wasn't a surprise, but should have been. And it took Eduardo Verástegui, the main producer, wrestled it out of Disney's hands after a year, and then took it everywhere. Turned down by Netflix, turned down by Amazon, turned down by everybody, and then finally Angel Studios saw it and said, "Are you kidding me? We'll grab this thing and go." And 90 days later, they launched, and it's astonishing what happened after that.
Now, if people want to see this movie, how do they find out where it's playing?
So go to angel.com/freedom, and it pops up. You put your area code in, and there you go. You can find out where it is and what theaters it's playing in.
All right, we will post that on my social sites. And is it still holding up okay in these movie houses, or are they starting to pull it?
No, it's doing the opposite. It's crazy. It's supposed to go down the screens, but they're going up. Our third weekend was bigger than our first weekend. In our first weekend, we beat Indiana Jones. This last week, we overtook Mission Impossible. So it's we're just all kind of dumbfounded watching it, and it's continuing to just go further. And there's going to be an international release into Latin America on August 31st. So we're now going worldwide.
And the point of the movie is to make it clear to anybody who will dare to watch it what's going on. You know, it's interesting. At the Cannon Building where we were, they had all kinds of food in the back. It was lovely. I was eating it before the movie, but during the course of the movie, I put everything down. You can't watch this and eat like it's some kind of, Ken and Barbie movie. This is the real deal. And I'm just telling people out there, don't just go by yourself. Bring some family and friends. It's not because they need the money for the movie, although that's always nice, but it's because we got to get the message out there. And you started this organization, the spearfund.org. What is that?
So the Spear Fund it's a fund that gathers resources and has experts on it to deploy to the groups and organizations that exist throughout the world. Over the last 10 years, several private organizations, nonprofits, and other groups have popped up with expertise in this field. And so we find them, we provide the resources to them, so that way every child will get the best rescuer on the planet to get them out of the hell they're in. So it's kind of a very inclusive, almost capitalistic in nature how we're running it, because if you're the best rescuer, you're going to get the funding, and then you get our consulting and coaching as well as we go rescue these kids together.
It's called the Spear Fund, the Spear, SPEAR Fund.org. We will have it linked on all our social sites. So tell people out there a little bit about your movie. Give them a little bit of feel for what you went through and what you had to do.
So it picks up when I'm in the U.S. government. I'm on the southern border, and I get permission because I beg my boss if I can go to Colombia and only consult on a case. And I overcommit, and I get really emotionally attached. And when they tell me to come home because I haven't proven myself, or I don't have enough evidence or jurisdiction, I call my wife and I say, well, what are we going to do? I can't come home. I know we're going to rescue these kids. And my wife says to me, as depicted in the film, quit your job. And I was more cowardice than the film depicts, because I said, that's not the right answer, Catherine. You're supposed to say, get home. We have 6 children and $3,000 in the bank. But she said to me instead, she's a person of great faith, and she said, I will not let you jeopardize my salvation by not doing this. That's what she said to me. The filmmaker said they couldn't put that line in because it would take too long to rehabilitate me as a courageous person, because those are the words I actually needed in real life to actually do this. And then we go ahead and do it, and it's a roller coaster right after that. And we end up finding those 54 children. Actually, in the end, it was over 100 that we rescued, but the film only gets to 54, and it became the biggest rescue operation to date that we know of.
And you go deep into the jungles to try and find this young girl, correct?
Right, and that is actually in a different location. We have a website that explains, because we have to still protect identity, so that's actually in a different location than what the film shows. But yes, this child labor camp where they're doing all sorts of horrific things, and we're actually still working in that camp, believe it or not. So that's why we have to be careful about where. So
we won't go into detail.
Yeah.
You actually got in a fight with the head of that group, or no?
No, that was liberties taken. So.
But you had your life on the line many times, didn't you? All they had to do is slit your throat or shoot you in the head.
Yeah, that's. I've been in dozens of those situations. We don't take guns in, because if they see the gun, they'll kill us immediately. So it's all about verbal judo and acting the role. We generally are wired up we got to record the evidence. So it's pretty high risk what our teams do throughout the world.
Do many of these countries let you in? Are they glad to see you, or you have to go in? Or many people that have been in your position sort of secretly?
So we most in the beginning, it was tough to get people back in 2014 when we really launched into this project. Not today, though. We've proven ourselves. We've rescued over 7,000 women and children, about 6,000 arrests. So at this point, the countries are actually begging us to come in, and we can't get there fast enough. And that's one reason I set up the Spear Fund, so that we could respond more rapidly, because we have a vast network of different operators, different operations groups, because the demand is so high. And this film has only increased that demand, which is great, because as this film goes into these other countries, the people are screaming for more response. And so we want to be prepared to assist.
We want to help them, folks. Hope we can have a Levin surge and get to the spearfund.org. Whatever you can donate to these folks will go directly into trying to save these children who are in these horrific sex slave camps, sex slave situations. And some of these little kids, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they're forced to endure rape 4 or 5 times a day, aren't they?
Absolutely. That is the reality of the situation. Yeah.
I mean, it's so unbelievable. It's so bad that all these pedophiles are out there. I mean, who would have thought? Seriously. And most of them, at least most of them who are getting these kids, are in the United States. Do we know what states they're mostly in even?
They're pretty equally, spread across the country. There's been a 5,000% increase in these child rape videos over the last 8 years alone. And one reason these foreign governments love to work with us is because we look like what the pedophiles look like. We are what the traffickers are trying to identify and service. So that's a sad commentary on our country and our Western culture. But it's Westerners who are the ones who are traveling down. But now the cartels can make more money if they can get the kids to the pedophiles. And courtesy of the United States of America, they're able to do that with these open borders.
We have over 85,000 missing migrant children in this country, don't we?
That's right. That's right. I was so encouraged, though, Mark, during the screening, when they delivered to Eduardo Verastegui with help of Heritage Foundation, you saw they delivered a bill proposal to go after those kids, to go find those 85,000 kids. So that was one of the most encouraging fruits I've seen from Sound of Freedom, because I would love to see this happen, and I'd love to be part of finding these 85,000 children.
But isn't it amazing to you, Tim Ballard of Sound of Freedom, isn't it amazing to you that you could have tens of thousands of these migrant children? They used to say, oh, look, they're in cages. The goal was to try and determine whose kids they are. You can't just give them to adults, because they can be these sex traffickers who have papers and so forth.
Yeah, the kids in cages thing was insane. Those are the lucky ones, and they're not cages, by the way. They're no. That's not the Four Seasons, but I mean, the kids are being protected there while we try to find their families, and that's what the President Trump was trying to do, and said he's accused of putting kids in cages, and it's like, well, the alternative to the institutions that they're in is to be released to whatever pedophile comes to pick them up. It's really astonishing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again. Go to the spearfund.org. See if you can help them out, folks. It's .org, so it's tax deductible. I know that much. The spearfund.org, the spearfund.org. And we will have that link, as well as a link where you can put in your zip code, and you can find out where the movie is near you. And Tim Ballard, we're going to have you back in a few months to see if anything's been moving anywhere. We appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you last night. Thanks so much for helping us out.
You too. God bless you.